Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the IJB. We've got some feedback on that. Yeah, we're using this committee room because we think the acoustics, particularly for people online, are better than what we had at the Health Village. I'm sorry it's a bit warm in here. I know when we had the meeting in the council chamber, everyone kept their coats on because it was absolutely freezing because the heating had broken down, but hopefully it won't be too bad in here. And to kick off, I will hand over to Emma Robertson for the housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Integration Joint Board. In the event of a fire or other emergency requiring our evacuation, you will hear a continuous single-tone klaxon. You should proceed immediately out of the building via the designated exit routes, which are out via the door through which you entered and head back to the main staircase and down to the ground floor. On exiting the building, you should proceed to the Arts Centre in Queen Street, where we will wait until clearance is given to return to the building. Closest toilets are located at either end of the corridor off the main stairwell. It would also be appreciated if mobile phones could either be switched off or put on silent mode. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting and we have some people in the townhouse and others participating remotely. If anyone joining online would like to ask questions, please use the raise your hand function or indicate in the meeting chat and I will alert the chair. The meeting is being recorded and published online after the meeting. Could all members leave their camera on but switch off their microphone when not speaking? I will now do a roll call and would ask that members confirm their attendance when their name is called so that this is clear in the recording and can also be recorded in the minute. Councillor Cook.
Yep, present.
Hussein Patwa, Vice Chair.
Present, morning.
David Blackburn.
Morning, everyone. Present, thank you.
Councillor Bonsell.
Present.
Councillor Fairfield.
Present.
Councillor Gregg.
Present.
Richie Johnson.
Present.
Jim Curry. I can see Jim online. Jamie Donaldson. Amanda Foster. Jenny Gibb.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Christine Hemming. Jane Russell for Maggie Hepburn.
Good morning, present.
Carol Buchanan for Caroline Howarth.
I'm present.
Thank you. Kenneth McAlpine. Amy MacDonald. Shona McFarlane. Phil Mackey.
Present, and for the record, I'm being shadowed today by a Public Health Registrar, Evie McGee, who is online but not visible.
Fiona Mitchell-Hill.
Present.
Debbie Oyegan. Graham Simpson.
Good morning.
And we have apologies from Mark Burrell, Maggie Hepburn and Caroline Howarth. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Yeah. So a few kind of welcomes. I'd like to welcome our new Chief Finance Officer, Amy MacDonald, who's now been with us for 7 weeks, something like that. Also like to record thanks to all those staff who were struggling their way into work when we had the snow the other week and during the storm the other week, when most of us were sitting on the kitchen table, keeping nice and warm. But obviously staff, a lot of our frontline staff, don't have that option. So thanks to them for struggling in. As usual, we'll be taking breaks every 90 minutes or thereabout to make sure people get plenty of comfort breaks and we can keep our energy levels up. I'm going to move the agenda round slightly after the declarations of interest and determination of exempt business. I'd like to take item 7.1, which is the finance report, first, so that Mr. Belford can not have to stay with us for too long, and then can go back to looking at the council's budget. He has all the fun jobs. I've got Jim Curry got his hand up to wanting to speak.
I was just wanting to say indicate my presence. I was having connection problems when the rota was done, so I am indeed here.
Thanks, Jim. Oh, and yeah, I could just remind people in the room, when you want to speak, if you press the little button at the bottom of the microphone, the thingy, that will allow people online to hear you. And when you've finished speaking, if you could press it again to turn it off. Otherwise, we get lots and lots of feedback, and it doesn't really work properly. So that's the welcome from me. Can I ask for any declarations of interest or transparency statements? Hussein.
Thank you very much, John. Firstly, my usual cover-all statement. I am a member of the Diverse Experience Advisory Panel, a named partner in the Scottish Government's Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy. I'm also the Lived Experience Depute on the Scottish Government's Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Leadership Board. Just for completeness, given the theme of my questions under item 6.1, a transparency statement, I'm an unpaid carer for my mum. And under 6.2, given the reference to coding, I'm involved in a project with the University of Dundee, which is looking at specific aspects of coding for chronic pain. Thank you.
Thanks. Any more declarations of interest? Can't see any hands. Okay, in which case we move on to 3.1, which is the determination of exempt business. We've got appendices which are exempt at 8.1 and 8.2. Can we agree to take those in private? Thank you very much. In which case we'll now move on to the finance report, which is in the additional circulation. Just before we get onto that, and I'll hand over to Amy and Jonathan and Fiona. Just to say, obviously it's a very challenging report. You look at the numbers, they're quite serious. If we were the only IJB in this kind of situation, we should be asking ourselves some very, very searching questions. However, every IJB in Scotland is in a fairly similar position. Don't take my word for it. In the paper, you'll see a quote from the Accounts Commission report from last July, which says that we've all got problems. Just like to, and we get that when I talk to the other chairs and vice chairs nationally. We also get the same picture at the COSLA Health and Social Care Board, which I sit on. And it's fair to say that ministers are fully aware of the position that every IJB is in, because we keep saying it. And finally, the other thing I'd say is it is going to be challenging. We are going to face some tough decisions, but I'd like to reassure the public and our staff that we'll be doing our utmost to mitigate the impact of any of the tough decisions that we have to take. So with that, I will hand over to Amy.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Just to give a summary of the paper, and then obviously I'm happy to take questions. So this financial year, 24-25, we're reporting on the outcome at the end of Q3, which is shown in the table down at 4.1 within the document. To summarise for members, that we are reporting at this point a £13 million overspend in the current financial year. We anticipate that to increase to £16 million at the end of the year. That is obviously a slightly worsened position than we had at the end of Q2 when we did start the recovery planning. That was kind of more or less 6 weeks ago. That unfortunately hasn't delivered the savings we were expecting in that period of time. So at the end of the year, we expect the outturn to be a net £10.5 million after the use of unallocated reserves of £6.2 million. And that is obviously not the best position for the board, but I think looking forward and looking forward positively, we are able to recognise what the impact of that overspend is just now, and we're working really hard to make sure that next year we don't have the same position occurring during the course of the year, and we're putting plans in place to mitigate that risk right now. Moving into the 25-26 year, we have done some forward planning, and an unmitigated risk of a potential overspend of around £21.5 million should we not take any action against that level of expenditure. And just to really kind of explain that to members of the board, the inflationary pressure funding that we are receiving next year from our partners almost covers the inflationary pressures at this stage, which we forecast for the 25-26 year. When we have applied that, we still have an overriding run rate of £1.8 million a month higher than funding we have available. From looking at the finances over the last 2 years, that, if you like, I would see as a structural deficit. We've always had a higher run rate than funding that we have had available. Only in past years, we've had reserve balances that we could dip into to kind of cover that additional cost. This year, we will use probably the last of our reserves. There's a small amount of allocated reserves remaining after we have used the bulk, but we'll need to look at those just to make sure that we're absolutely fully committed to that expenditure to see if we can minimise the gap further this year. But certainly our plans for next year are addressing, if you like, the overspend that we've had in previous years. And we've been looking at that in earnest, and certainly allude to the fact that it's really, really important that we reduce our expenditure from the 1st of April, when we've got plans in place where we're reasonably confident that we have the savings in April at this stage and into May, just at this very early stage from the work that we have done initially. And we'll pursue that and obviously keep the board fully engaged as we go through that process. It's important as we go through that we measure the impact of any change that we make. It's really important that we protect the service for the people that use it. So the financial position will be managed around that, and in essence, that no decisions will be made that cause harm or detriment to people as far as possible. So that's a very high level summary. It's obviously a very difficult time, but I think moving forward with positivity, that we know what we need to do, and we know how we're going to take that forward. Be able to give more detail on the substance of that in the private session. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Do folk have any questions? And again, if there are questions that need to be addressed on the exempt appendix, we need to take that in private. But any questions? Hussein?
Thank you very much, John. And can I start by echoing your welcome to Amy, and welcome to you. And I think it's fair to say you've done a power of work in your 7 weeks here, and it's very much appreciated, and look forward to seeing what's coming next. Can I also, before I proceed, on a personal note, say thank you for the cover report that you produced. Finance is always challenging, particularly for visually impaired people, given the nature of the documents that involves. Your report is extremely readable, and the way in which you have given us the figures and the narrative in sentence form makes it really easy to understand. And I don't think I've ever had quite so many questions on a finance paper because of that readability, but I won't belabor that point for too long. A couple of questions. Some of this is simply clarity, and some of it is around forward planning. Firstly, on 4.11.2, it's noted here that we have 532k of charges not yet recovered. Just for clarity, is that around some of the work that was put into the recovery plan on recovering invoices and making sure that we were paid on time? Or is there additional narrative to that?
Thanks very much, Hussein, and thanks for those very lovely comments. You know, I don't take them I don't take them lightly, so thank you very much. Just on the charges, it's just that's just a normal part of the process. We're just slightly behind on raising those charges. So it's just more or less, if you like, housekeeping, you know, in terms of where we are in the point of the year. So we're actually pursuing that just now to make sure we've raised those. So just kind of the things that you pick up through review kind of reminds staff that we need to prioritise that and get that done. So there's nothing untoward with that at all.
Thank you very much. If I can move on to, I believe it's 6.1, and it's interesting that there's your analysis in here that the NHS also needs to review its budget. obviously is one of our partner organisations, and they will have their own constraints and priorities as well. I'm just wondering if you could maybe bring us up to date with any discussions that you've had with partners generally, but also with the NHS on this point, and specifically to the point in 6.1. Have you had any conversations with them about how they propose to go through their budget reviews, which will obviously have an impact on the payments that they make to us?
Thanks. I think that the work with the NHS is really just a reference to probably my early stage in the role, that I've had an opportunity to spend a lot more time going through the city accounts and not so much on the NHS, which I'm now working into just now. So I think obviously the NHS extremely challenged just now in terms of their own budget position. So that is something that we'll just pick up over the next quarter before the end of the year. So equivalent challenge being put forward, but certainly very positive relationships working with the NHS staff. And I think that it's the same process across the whole budget.
And just lastly, looking slightly further into the long grass and without delving into the potential options for savings, but just on a general point, given the recommendations that we have, we will use up the last of our available reserves for this year. I know you indicated some forward projections and looking into the future. What's your general view in terms of our ability to begin rebuilding those reserves in terms of a medium to long-term time frame?
Thanks. So I think next year is going to be a little different because we have to reduce our cost base. But after that, if we continue to receive inflationary uplifts in each of the financial years, and we have like our robust plans, our sustainability plans going forward, I think there's every chance that we can do that. I would say that at the moment, I couldn't give a degree of confidence because we're quite early on in the process, but certainly it's something that Fiona and I have discussed, and we will definitely be looking to bring forward what that might look like in future years, particularly around the prevention agenda, which is so important, if you like, to making people live well and reduce the overall cost burden on the services that we offer going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. I appreciate it.
Alice, well, Martin sounds, but I think Jonathan wants to come in.
Thanks, Chair. And just in reply to the point about the NHS, I suppose about the scenario planning, it was really just to add a little bit of colour to that in respect of the working relationship. Amy rightly said that we've got a good working relationship with NHS Grampian. We meet frequently and regularly. And in fact, Amy and myself have got a meeting this afternoon with the Director of Finance for NHS Grampian, just to keep in touch and make sure we're all on the same page. So, but that planning process for next year, from a council point of view, we understood the risk back at Q2, and we took it an instruction from council to look at scenarios going forward in terms of what the potential exposure should be there. So we've done that as part of our work towards setting our budgets for 25-26 and shared with NHS Grampian some of that information about what those scenarios might look like. So I think it's helpful to just add that little bit extra, just in terms of this is not something that has been taken lightly. It's not something that is understated. I think we're very clear that there's a real underlying matter that needs to be addressed, and Amy's paper is very clear in the way in which that sets out not only the challenges today, the challenges for tomorrow in many respects. So, but it was really just in order that both systems and both partners are aware of not only their own financial position, but it's clearly challenging from an NHS Grampian point of view. From an ACC point of view, we've constantly spoken about a gap between income and expenditure, and are constantly looking for savings in terms of managing that. But I think what we've brought together here as part of the 25-26 position is trying to bring together an understanding of the scenarios that might play out, so that we're both as prepared as we can be going forward into the future.
Thanks for that. Martin, did you have a question?
Yes, a question just to come back to reserves. Noting that maximum use of available reserves has been actioned. I'm just wondering if there is any chance of further movement on the deficit, because that's quite a considerable contribution which is being asked to address that. I appreciate it's a very short timescale, but that is a forecast. But we're looking at, according to the papers, we're looking at 6 million from the NHS and 4 million from the local authority. Is there any chance of movement on that, or are those fairly fixed and final figures?
Thanks, Martin. I think that that's our estimated position, outturned position at the current time, and we very much hope that we can hold that through to the end of the year. We've identified that there are some risks surrounding that, as there is when there are any estimates made, but we anticipate that if we hold that position, that would be good if we can do so, and any improvement would be a bonus.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I mean, I was wondering if there might be movement either way. But there's a suggested follow-up meeting, I think in February, March. Would that be an opportunity to get more of an update about the landscape at that point? I think that might be a good idea, because we need to keep on top of this.
And that's the one that's mentioned in the recommendations. Yeah, that one actually I probably should have said on that. We need to have it as a formal IJB meeting. So we haven't got the date yet, but we're going to look for dates. But if members could try and prioritise that, because we need to be quorate, because if we can't have a formal meeting if we're not quorate, but we need to have an additional meeting as set out in the recommendations. Amy?
And thanks, and I will bring the updated financial position as we have. We're just moving into February now, so we've just finished period 10. So I would look to bring that information forward. Thank you.
Great, thank
you. Okay, I've got a hand from Richie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and again, thanks, Amy. Again, I thought it was a really well set out paper, so thanks for setting out so well. It's also a question around about reserves, and while agreeing that we need to use those uncommitted reserves, I do recognise in terms of the integration and change reserve that's been used, and that may impact on the ability to transform or have additional capacity to transform. So that's not without cost in that regard. And I guess it's just on that, maybe from either Amy or Fiona, possibly around, I guess there's that extra challenge it gives us around resourcing that activity, but I agree that we need to do it in the light of the current circumstances and pressure. Thanks.
Yeah, so we've got a good staff complement just now, and it's certainly what we'll be looking at when we develop our plans. We want to have them very process focused, so we will have our project plans set up and how we're going to deliver our savings. And I think it's going to be really important to make sure that we've got our business as usual commitments kind of well managed, and we provide space for staff to deliver what we need to take forward going forward. So it's not as if we're looking for significant financial investment at this point, but certainly as we go forward, I think there'll be careful financial planning carried out, because often it is the case that you can kind of do some degree of self-funding within the year, so you kind of manage all your accounts together in order to provide that little bit extra budget where we do need that. And I think it's also about spreading our understanding of what is out there as well. There are a lot of good IT resources that we are going to be able to have access to, and we would look to, where we're making changes, always have an appropriate mitigation in place to try and cover any gaps that might be foreseen going forward. I think that taking a whole system approach is also very important, because it can sometimes be the case that if you make a change in one area, there's an unintended consequence in another. So we'll be looking forward to capture that as much as possible, because it would be ridiculous if we saved money in one area, but it led to a consequential cost increase that was more significant than the saving in another. So we'll make sure that we have that correctly understood when we come forward, so that it is a real saving that we want to push. Thank you.
Bring in Fiona.
And I think we are, Richie, so absolutely looking at every opportunity. So aware that Scottish Government have got a transformation fund. We had a conversation yesterday at one of the national meetings I was at about that opportunity technology offers us. So how can we be using technology more? And, you know, Aberdeen City, we've done quite a lot of work on technology. So I'm hoping our reputation is good, and the Scottish Government might well come with us on some of that journeys, because we're absolutely up for that testing of doing something different. So we'll be looking out for money as well as internal, what we can do. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think if I could add, just in hindsight, I mentioned the Accounts Commission report, and I think they've been saying, even if you go back pre-COVID, they've been saying we can't continue to operate in the same way as we have been doing. We need to make some transformation changes. So, and then I've got a hand from Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question about item 218. And I was just wondering, are those decisions about potential changes in services, will they come to the IGB?
Yeah, so absolutely, any significant changes will be brought forward for member approval and discussion, and also it would never be the case that we wouldn't bring forward options. I think there's different ways of doing things so that to ensure there's appropriate input in that decision making as we go forward.
Thank you. Yep. Could I also ask about 411.5 primary care prescribing? It's proposed that like an in-year environment is reversed. Is that something that this committee would have to agree to, or because I know there's a lot of work being done on the prescribing budget because it's an area of pressure and in the budget, and I just thought if the environment were to be reversed, it would just give us maybe a clearer picture of what has been going on during the whole course of the year for both of those budgets.
Yes, I think that's one of those decisions that in hindsight would that been carried out. So effectively, sometimes you make an assumption at the beginning of the year and life changes during the course of the year. So I think it's something that we would want to review and make a decision point on. It's perhaps most suitable to do that at the additional meeting that John referred to. Thanks.
Yeah, and it would, any environments do need to be agreed by the IJB. I think on the prescribing budget, traditionally, that's often been an area of overspend. And we made sure this year that we'd put plenty of money in the pot. That's why we've not overspent. But I know a number of other IJBs have got a real problem with primary care prescribing, because it's one of those things where someone goes to the GP in March and the GP says, you need an aspirin inhaler, you need some statins, you need antibiotics. The GP is not legally or ethically allowed to say, sorry, we've run out of money. If a patient needs a prescription, the patient gets the prescription, which is, yeah, why it's traditionally been difficult to manage. Any more? Oh, yes, Jennifer.
Yeah, just one final question, please. It was item 610. Public consultation, was that the budget consultation that took place recently? Or is there an additional public consultation going on?
So thank you, Jennifer. So yes, it was the public consultation, and obviously with the changes going forward, we'll continue to consult with the public and also with Healthcare Improvement Scotland for any major changes. We have to have a conversation with them as well. So we're doing all that as well, but it was the public consultation 6.10 referring to. Thank you.
Any more? I'm not seeing any more hands. Not on screen. In which case, can we move to the recommendations? Can we agree them? Thank you very much. Which brings us to the end of item 7.1. Jonathan can now be released to go back to his day job, and then we can return to the rest of the agenda. So the first item on the rest of the agenda is actually the video presentation, which we normally have. And for those who are new, we've traditionally over the past 4 or 5 years just done a wee video presentation at the start of the meeting, just to get people's mindset into what we're all about and the folk that we are there to serve and look after. So if Ros is ready to do the video presentation, we can move to that.
Yeah. It's really important to give it a look when you look at it.
what impact has the wellbeing team had on you?
Well, it's has a great impact because it's enabled me to, do things I've never done before.
Oh, very
and,
good.
Although I'm not fit as I used to be, but still enjoy them and new activities and
Yeah.
everything. And the team's lovely.
Oh.
They look after me well.
And the Abbott Boogie, you've been going there since it started, really. And how would you say that's impacted your health or your well-being?
Well, it helps me all over because I'm not as I used to be due to Parkinson's. I have to keep moving about, but I love it, and I get up and dance, or try to anyway, and met new friends as well, and old ones I've met as well, which is good. So I really look forward to it now.
Lovely, thank you.
For over 65s in Aberdeen City. Darren was very responsive and enthusiastic and was keen to network and come to Cornhill to meet with myself and some colleagues to explain more about his role and resources that were available to our patient group. At this meeting, I discussed with Darren some developments that we were keen to explore in the hospital, namely in-reach therapeutic groups from community organisations and developing our therapeutic garden, which had been seriously neglected since COVID. Darren was and continues to be extremely proactive and helpful with both these projects. In regard to the garden, he immediately told me about the health improvement funding, which I had not been aware of, and sent me the link for the application, and we were fortunate enough to be awarded £5,000. He was then pivotal in putting us in touch with the Men's Shed, who had been keen to get involved in the project. He also put me in contact with Pippa Robbie, who has kindly offered to complete a garden design for us. Not only has Darren networked with people on our behalf, but he's attended meetings at Cornhill to help move the garden project forward. He's also given up his own time to assist practically with the garden and continues to help and generate ideas and inspiration. In regard to the in-reach groups, using his contacts, Darren was able to put us in contact with Alan Johnston, who works closely with Aberdeen Football Club Community Trust, offering football memories groups in the city. Darren organised and helped to facilitate a meeting with Alan and myself, and helped us to progress and move forward with the idea. So we're now at a stage where Alan and his volunteers offer a monthly in-reach memories group at Cornhill, which is available to patients from the 3 older adult wards. Darren is so positive and enthusiastic and has an energised approach to new initiatives and always does his best to be helpful and supportive. As a result of Darren's work and influence, Cornhill Hospital is running regular in-reach memory groups to patients from the 3 inpatient wards. This provides social stimulation and variety for our patients and has been a highlight for some during their inpatient stay. The garden project is still ongoing, but once completed, then we hope to have a lovely OT multi-use therapeutic space for all patients to access. This would not have happened if Darren had not informed me about the Health Improvement Fund and continued to support us to get the project going. Darren has provided information which has benefited patients in terms of knowledge about groups and support that is available to them in the city following their discharge from hospital. And as mentioned above, their wellbeing has been benefited by attending the memory groups and will definitely be benefited when the garden is available for use. Many thanks.
Welcome, Janice from Lord Hayes Court. So my name's Carol Bigg and I've been working with you and all the other ladies and gentlemen at Lord Hayes Court for 2.5 years now, and I must say it's been a pleasure. So Janice, how have the wellbeing team supported you and all the ladies and gentlemen at Lord Hayes Court?
It's a constant stream of support that we get in all areas, particularly for soup and Sammy's. For value for money, without question, everyone in Lord Hayes Court, and I deal with the folk from the other places like Seaton House and Reed Court and Livingston Court, and they all say what value for money. It's lovely food and everybody smiles and makes us welcome, and no matter how many people turn up, they can always produce another table. So all round it's an excellent idea.
Brilliant. And how do you think Soup and Sannies has impacted everyone?
It's particularly for the people who can't get out of their houses readily, usually through physical disability. They can come on the bus and get straight here and straight back, and it gives them something to look forward to if they have no family or no close friends, because as you get older this happens, and so they look forward to their fortnightly visit to Soup and Sanny's with great gusto.
Perfect, thank you for that. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I would just like to say thank you to you and yours, Carol, and thank you to the council. I don't know who thought it up in the first place, but it's an excellent idea.
Perfect, thank you, Janice.
Oh, my name is Margaret Park and I come from Kingswells, Aberdeen. And I have been with the Wellbeing team since 2014.
All that time?
All that time, yes.
So when and why did you first come into contact with the Wellbeing team?
Well, I was very ill and I was suffering from PTSD and chronic anxiety, and I was referred by the physiotherapist to get in contact with, she got in contact with the Wellbeing team, thinking that would make a big difference to my life.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lovely girl called Hayley came from the Wellbeing team, and she came in and showed me all the different things that I could try, and it made such a big difference. It gave me an insight into the outside world, it gave me hope for the future, and suggested all the different things I could try. An example of introduced me to the internet, and also for the different therapies, reflexology, and then the biggest difference was we were working towards getting out of my four walls after being in a year and a half in my house. And the difference was we went out to the beach where we had a bacon roll, and that was the first normality I've had in my life for a year and a half.
And it was a very fine bacon roll.
It was very, very fine. And we went and had a real walk on the beach, and really, really enjoyed it and appreciated it so much. It gave me hope for the future. And I am now very well, and I have joined all the activities. I'm a member of the Aberdeen Football Community Trust, which I've been with since 2015, and I participated in all the different activities, Tetra Gym, the walking group, doing dementia training, and also the Golden Games was a huge plus, because I got to meet a lot of people at the Golden Games who I'm still friends with to this day, and tried all different activities which I would never have ever known existed. Well, I would thoroughly recommend anyone going through a bad time like I was, that would be a very good idea to get in touch with the Wellbeing team, because it gives you the hope and the confidence, especially, to try new things, meet new people. And Hayley recommended I become a befriender, which I did very successfully for 3.5 years and really enjoyed it, meeting other people. And I would definitely say go for it. And also for the community trust and all the different activities that you could take there and enjoy, because it's not just a one-off. You've got to keep at it every week and keep doing it. And the longer you do it, the better it makes you feel.
And how do you feel now, Margaret? Pardon the cough.
I feel amazing now, because I really, really enjoy my life now, and it's given me so much hope for the future, and now I'll live every day to the fullest.
Good. Thank you so much, Margaret. Do you want to say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, normally we do a much shorter video, but we just want that one. We decided to pick and go for the full length because it just gives a flavour of the different things that are going on. And we've got Ian Robertson at the back. I don't know, Ian, do you want to make a comment? Sorry to put you on the spot. I probably should have spoken to you beforehand, but I thought you just might want to say a couple of words about that and about what the wellbeing team does.
Yeah, I really appreciate that opportunity. Thank you very much, Chair. So hopefully members can see the benefits of a really personal approach that the wellbeing team provides. They are a fun team. They try to keep things informal, but they're also highly professional and great at delivering prevention and early intervention in our communities. They also offer terrific value for money. It's relatively low cost community interventions that's got high value to the wider system. So if we can prevent people from going accessing GP practice, going to A&E and keeping people at home for longer out of care settings, then that's an absolute massive benefit to not just the Integration Joint Board, but to all our partners in the wider health and social care system. And I think what the video has really shown is the excellent interpersonal and organisational skills that the wellbeing coordinators have. They're also very persistent and very encouraging and really dedicated. And it's that dedication that allows them to gain that trust and build relationships. And we've seen that in the results. So through our Lloyd project, we reported that community participation and Stay Well, Stay Connected increased by 169% between 2023 and 24. So in terms of actual numbers, 660 people participating in 2023. It now stands at 1,777 on a regular basis, and that's not including big, large-scale community events. This is people who are attending on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, and all the various activities that were outlined in the video. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the wellbeing coordinators, and as one of the managers, it's just a pleasure to be associated with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, if there are no questions on that, we can move on to the rest of the agenda. I'll say thank you, Ian. So that will take us to 4.2 on the agenda, which is the minute of the meeting of the board on the 19th of November. So if I just go through page by page. So we've got page 5. Just shout if you've got comments, questions. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. And page 15. Are we happy to approve that as an accurate record? Thank you very much. The next item is 4.3, which is the draft minute of the Risk and Audit Committee. Sorry. Very strange things were happening to my computer then. Yeah, are there any questions on this one? Martin, did you want to draw anyone's attention to? Good. In which case, are we happy to agree the minute? Yep. Thank you. Right, the next one is 4.4, which is the draft minute of the Clinical Care Governance Committee. Mark Burrell has sent his apologies, who Mark normally chairs this committee. I don't know whether any of the other folk who were there want to comment at all. Seeing any hands? Nope. In which case, are we happy to note that that draft minute? Okay. Next item is 4.5. which is the committee planner, which I think looks relatively straightforward this time. Anyone got any questions on the planner? Okay, happy to note it. Thank you very much. Then we go to the insights, sessions and topic specific seminars. Hussein, sorry. Yep.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy with the planner as is. I was just wondering if we could maybe give consideration to doing a deep dive on AI, given it is rapidly emerging. We've already got some pieces of work utilizing AI going on around the social work systems. Just in the news this morning, there's coverage about AI potentially bringing benefits in terms of cancer diagnostics. And I think given the advantages that AI can bring, but obviously the costs that may be involved as well in that, it probably behooves us to keep an eye on that and keep abreast of developments. So it was just a suggestion if that's something we could maybe add, maybe not at every session, but I don't know, a couple of times a year or something, just so that we keep abreast on where the opportunities are and where we can get benefit from that, particularly in terms of the challenges that we're facing at the moment.
I can see Alison nodding. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we can look into. I was going to ask today for suggestions for to populate some of the sessions this year. So that's a good start, Hussein. Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments, questions, or are we happy to note the insight sessions and topic-specific seminars? Yep, thank you very much. That then brings us to the Chief Officer's report, which is item 4.7. Any comments, questions on this one?
Yes, thanks. I've lost the page. There's the section on Rutherstone House Care Home. I wondered if we might have an update on that. It was quite concerning to have the news about that. So an update would be useful.
Thank you, Martin. Are you happy? Did you want to come in, Graham? Or no, that's fine. So yeah, we're making good progress to relocate the residents. We've only got 7 left, Martin. So we've got them all relocated safely into new accommodation, which is good. And we've obviously been doing that along with families, in cooperation with families, and taking them with us. The care inspector have been back to Rutherstone, and they have taken away the language now has gone out, the improvement notice. They're happy they've met that. However, they said it was very difficult to measure because of the low number of residents there. We're working very closely with VSA to get that relocated, the 7 people, and do expect to manage that within the timeline that we have.
Good. Yeah, that's good to hear that the well-being of the individual residents is the top priority. I'm wondering about the longer term future of that facility. Obviously, there will be that will add to the pressures on capacity. So, are we looking at potentially losing that service, or will it be brought back into use?
So I think the longer term, I'm not sure, Martin. We've got ongoing conversations with the VSA and Care Inspectorate about that, whether that would need. What I'm delighted to say, and I'm not quite sure how the wonderful teams that we have managed it, but considering we started off with 28 residents there, although it was a 40-bedded home, but because it had been under large-scale inquiry for quite a while, there hadn't been an increase in that residence. We've actually seen our delayed discharges reducing, which was obviously a significant concern for us if we were taking that 40 beds out of the system, the potential impact that could have. But as I say, down to the really hard work of our teams, we've managed to manage the delayed discharges and keep that on a downward trajectory, including taking that home out. So, but as the future of it, we'll continue to work with VSA and the Care Inspectorate. Thank you.
I think I've got a hand from Graham online.
Just to mention, good morning, everybody. Yeah, Graham, the comms lead for the partnership. Just to mention at this point that the partnership comms, i.e. me, work very closely with VSA, the operator of Rutherstone House, to manage the multifarious communications required in this process, in terms of informing elected members, IJB members, staff, families, keeping the media abreast of what was happening in a fair and reasonable manner. And very fruitful discussions were held between me and VSA, and I think it was managed as well as we possibly could.
So if I could just come back, yeah, it's been particularly helpful to have that flow of useful information. I think that's helped to contain some of those concerns, because it was very worrying to hear that news. So information and the news has been really helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Martin. Jennifer?
Thank you, Chair. I was just had a question about the community appointment days, and I think there's one scheduled for tomorrow. I was wondering how success is going to be measured, and I think it's possibly a wider question, because I think the ACH SCP is providing services in a range of ways across Aberdeen, and I was just wondering how are we able to measure success, particularly if we're moving towards prevention and early intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the measure is, it's a new process, so we're just starting on this, and this is so it'll be the third one that's held across the whole of Grampian region. So the first one was in Murray, and I think the Murray one was absolutely looking at trying to reduce some of the waiting lists of people that have been waiting for a long time on waiting lists, and that is some of what we're trying to do. It's chronic pain that we're looking at, and again, my expert to my left, but it is about what else can we do to keep people well. So we've got structured bits of the day, but also drop-ins. And actually, I think the experience of our last community appointment day was there was a really high number of drop-ins. And Luann, who's been leading this for us, has got some fantastic stories from feedback from people about they attended for one thing, but have actually made a connection of 5 or 6 different things and have kind of walked out with a skip in their step. So I think a lot of it will be anecdotal feedback, but we will be looking at waiting times. We will be looking at that future demand as well, because I do think the community appointment days are something that could really make a difference going forward. And I'm working hard with the teams to think, what can we do differently to make sure that we are getting that ageing well, which is a real focus for us, that prevention agenda. So what can we do to enable people? And even going back to Margaret's story, the difference the wellbeing team have made, because I've actually met Margaret, and her story, to hear it from herself, is so personal, and I think has transformed that woman's life. And if the community appointment days can start to help to do some of that, that will help to reduce our future demand as well. Thank you.
Richie?
Yeah, thanks again, John. Just a couple of comments. Firstly, just to welcome the work done the staff conference, which is really good. And back in December, I think it was. Just great to, I guess, to get a few people in the room and just to, I guess, to hear about what's going on across the partnership was terrific. And also the welcome the response to supporting ARI with a critical incident that was declared as part of the paper here. Just again, question / comment on winter planning. I guess dangerous to say we're in February and we're not through winter yet, but just any comment around how that's gone, how the plan's gone, I guess what was expected, if there's any kind of surprises, or is it largely as expected? Thanks.
Thanks, Richie. And yeah, I think, yes, it's only February, but we're breathing a sigh of relief that January has passed and we've not seen the weather that we've seen, because obviously that puts that significant pressure. Although we did have some snow, we've not had that prolonged periods that we're used to if we've been around for a number of years like I have. So I think that our winter planning is proceeding. We're continuing. Amy's absolutely working with the teams around about the financial impact on that, because obviously that can have an impact on spend and give us some curveballs. So progressing, working really closely with our partners in NHS Grampian and the other partnerships as well, just to make sure that we're trying to balance the risk across all. But yeah, no concerns. We're on target and continue to do what we need to do and respond as we need to, as you see, with NHS Grampian, the critical incident, and the team responded very well to that. So we will continue, but hopefully we're over the worst. Thank you.
Okay, any more hands? Not seeing any more. Yeah, I'd like just to echo Richie's comment about the conference, which I thought was absolutely excellent, because what it does for me, it enables me to talk to some of our partner organisations and some of our frontline staff, and to hear it from the folk on the coalface, which I think is always important, rather than just having papers in front of you. So I thought that was really good. So record thanks to those who participated and organised and made it all happen. And also, my other comment on the report is 743 staff attended some of our wellbeing events. Staff wellbeing to me is one of the crucial things we do, because we've got to keep our staff healthy, fit and happy insofar as they can be happy, given that they've got really tough jobs to do. So yeah, thanks for doing that. And if we have got members of staff watching or listening, it's okay not to feel okay. So everybody needs to remember that. Okie doke. Are we happy to note the contents of the report?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, thank you, Chair. And for clarity, I'm briefly introducing this report as the Service Manager for the Grampian Specialist Sexual Health Service. If there are any questions, there are also some expert colleagues online to help me, should that be required, Chair. So this report really provides an update to IGB members on the provision of abortion care provided by the Grampian Specialist Sexual Health Service, and was referred to the IGB by the 1st of October Clinical Care and Governance Committee. Members are asked to note the challenges of the significantly increasing demand within the service for abortion care, the work ongoing as part of the Grampian Hosted Services Review to consider with partners in Shire and Murray and Grampian activity and funding levels. And I'm happy to answer any questions. As I say, there are expert colleagues online too who could probably help as well. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, comments? Hussein?
Thank you very much, Sandy. And it's just with respect to the latter point that you made about the all of the host services that we operate, and you know, that will be the same for colleagues in the Shire and Murray as well. I'm assuming the review around funding models applies to all hosted services, and I'm just wondering if you had any update around the timelines and potential deliverables for that.
Thank you, Hussein. I'm fortunate, you know how they say, surround yourself with people who know more than you about something. So I'm going to look to Alison to the left, who's kind of got a key role in that in a Grampian context. I might invite Alison. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, we're in the process of working our way through the recommendations from the audit for the hosted services. So we'll be bringing a report on those back around about April, May time, and looking to make some decisions in terms of what we do for budget setting going forward for 26-27 towards the end of the calendar year. So work is progressing. We are looking to make improvements where we can with bringing some more efficiency and some more transparency around about the hosted services.
Okay, any more comments or questions? Nope, Richie.
Yeah, just a quick one. I appreciate the kind of detailed paper going to the other committee, but just said, is Grampian an outlier in terms of the increasing demand, the level of increasing demand compared to others nationally? And is that, I guess, how do we get on top of that, which is a bigger question perhaps?
I don't think so, but I'm conscious we've got colleagues such as Chris Littlejohn on the line, or Phil Mackey. I don't think so, but maybe I would invite one of those two to introduce themselves and maybe respond to that question.
Thank you. I'll defer to, it's Chris Littlejohn here, Sexual Health Lead for NHS Grampian. I'll defer to Daniela. Actually, I see that she's got her hand up.
Hi there, Daniela Broley. I'm consultant in sexual health and clinical lead for the sexual health bloodborne virus MCN as well, and also represent abortion care on the Women's Board. So there has been a national increase in abortion demand across Scotland and indeed across the UK. So from that perspective, we're not an outlier. However, I think the main concern from our perspective is that we're having to obviously redistribute staff towards abortion care because it is a critical and time-dependent service. and therefore we are not providing preventative methods. So for example, it's the same staff who would be doing contraceptive care who are doing abortion care. So there's a bit of a vicious cycle here, which has been presented at different forums, including the Chief Executive Team in NHS Grampian and the Women's Board and the Integrated Family Portfolio, as well as public health forums. So it was to highlight the risk with that we obviously want to focus on prevention as much as we can, but if we're in a situation where we're having to we have a 30% increase over several years, we're not able to keep up with that prevention activity to the extent that we need to bring that demand down.
Come back.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle, and thanks, Andy. That kind of connects to the other kind of thought I was perhaps going to make around the financial implications. So while there's no immediate financial implications, actually what's been described is that there might be in the medium longer term in terms of that extra pressure coming through if demand increases and prevention is less able to be pursued, I guess. So yeah, just thanks for the answer, and I understand the challenge.
Okay, anyone else wanting to come in? Oh, we've got someone online. Oh, Danielle, you want to come back?
So we're already seeing an increase in financial risk because if we have increased demand, we have longer waiting times. We report on KPIs, which have been included in the report, and our KPIs for being able to assess to procedure isn't always at the level that it needs to be, and therefore if people are more likely to be in, for example, a hospital environment or indeed out of board because they're beyond the timescale that we can provide that care, there is a cost implication for that, both in terms of acute care locally and providing out of board care, which is obviously more expensive.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Not seeing any more hands, in which case are we happy to note the challenges and note the activity that's underway as per the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to 6.1, which is the Carers Strategy Annual Report. I don't know whether yes, it's Stuart.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. I was struck by some of the comments from Amy earlier on around prevention and reducing the cost burden on our services. So I wanted to start with asking a question around carers. If you had to put a monetary financial value on the level of support and the scale of that value that unpaid carers provide our system, what would it be? So if you keep that in your head, whether it's hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, because I'm going to share it with you just now. So on the 21st of November last year, Carers Scotland, as part of the Carers UK network, provided their latest report, which estimated that on average, unpaid carers save our economy £15.9 billion a year. If we break that down, that's £306 million per week. It's £43.7 million per day and £1.9 million per hour in terms of the scale and value that unpaid carers provide our system and the support that's there. That data was taken from the carers census, where over 620,000 carers were able to respond, and we know that figure is underreported. I would also say that I know reports like that grab headlines because it starts to ask questions around, okay, what would our level of A&E emissions be if we didn't have unpaid carers supporting our system, for example? The report states that the system would simply collapse, and it puts it against a context of the overall NHS Scotland budget for 2022-2023, which was 17.8 billion. So I just wanted to share those figures, not because they're staggering, but simply because it helps demonstrate the scale and value that unpaid carers provide our system. So I'm delighted to be able to bring forward the second annual report of the Carer Strategy delivered by our Carer Strategy Implementation Group. And it can't be underestimated the sheer scale and value of the work that's been undertaken both by carers and support organisations across the city over the past 12 months. And I really want to focus on three key areas. The first one being the development and progress of our Carers Reference Group. that is a group that is breaching new ground for us. It's allowing us to reach groups and people that we would never have had the chance to even speak to before, and now we're able to engage with them on a regular basis. It's a flexible group. We meet carers when it suits carers, so that could be 11 o'clock at night over an email. It could be 5 o'clock in the morning at a phone call. It's evenings, it's weekends, it's whenever carers can manage. So it's not like this where we invite them to come in on a quarterly basis to a meeting. We engage with carers, how carers would like to be engaged with. And it provides kind of twofold for the IJB. One is it gives the platform for us as a partnership and an IJB to be able to go and engage directly with carers whenever we need to, as and when that need arrives. And it also, crucially, the second point, make sure that lived experience informs the decisions that we make, both through the Carer Strategy Implementation Group and partnership-wide. So it's very important. So a big thanks to Matt Carter, who's our Consultation and Engagement Officer, who's led that work. It's been fantastic. The second point I would like to raise is the Carers Collaborative Commissioning process that we have just finished. Big thanks to Neil and the contacts team and everyone that's been involved in that. I had never been involved in a collaborative commissioning process as such, where I suppose I was maybe naive. I thought that if everyone's in one room and you've got providers in the room, everyone's like, but wanting the same piece of the cake, if you like, right? We're all going to be fighting against each other. And it just wasn't like that at all. It was fantastic. We had carers in the room, we had providers in the room, all working together, all setting up KPIs, all setting up what good looks like for our carers moving forward. And I'm delighted to say that that process concluded at the end of last year and the contracts have been awarded. So we're really, really pleased that that went through IJB last year, and really looking forward to getting to work with the providers. And another thing to say there is we've been able to bring young carers and adult carers providers more closely together under our strategy, which is fantastic. So thanks to Graham Simpson and Children's Services for helping us with that too. The last area I want to mention, and I could keep going for ages, but the last area I would mention is the improvement projects, which can be found at pages 94 to 102 in your pack. We were able to provide a small amount of funding through the funding we get from Scottish Government to help support local initiatives which help deliver on our Carer Strategy Action Plan. All of the information is there, and it includes the impact that some of this work has had on particularly parent carers and young carers, and it's been fantastic to see. There was a very emotional meeting in December where we reviewed the impact that all the projects had had. There were tears, plenty of coffee and cake as well, but it was just fantastic to see the level of work that we've been able to go through over the past 12 months, which has been excellent. And that's something we want to continue into next year too. I'm normally ably assisted by Grace Milne, the Senior Project Manager for Strategy, who does a lot of work around the projects, but Grace couldn't be here today. So I'll do my very best to answer any questions you've got on those if you have any. But if I'm not able to, and I look awkwardly at Alison or anyone else around the room, you'll know that I'll have to come back to you on that. So lastly, the report is packed with lots of other information, including our data. You'll see a 43% increase in the number of carers identified, which is a core part of our strategy. The strategy essentially aims to increase the positive experience that carers has across the city, and we're well on our way to do that. We're also moving into the final year of the strategy. So over the course of the next 12 months, we'll be looking at review. We'll be looking at bringing a more Grampian-wide view into this. How can we work together? And there's just lots of other information in there around our next steps. So with that in mind, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Martin.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really exciting and positive to hear that feedback. I think it's right. We probably don't appreciate enough all of the benefits and the good support that comes from carers. So the action plan is really excellent to see. There's a list of bespoke groups and funded activities. I think that's all brilliant. Like the community wellbeing activities, it's delivering help and support at the front line with small groups, with individuals, that makes a real difference. So that's all really helpful. one point that I wanted to ask about was, is it 1.1.5, the delays in supporting groups from minorities? And I mean, I think we're all a member of some minority or other. So, so you're talking about a large proportion of the population, and I'm wondering if that's an area that needs to be targeted, perhaps with some of those tailor-made engagement activities. I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts, any plans about helping there with the carers in those groups. It's a large population. Aberdeen's very multicultural, many minorities. So, thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, absolutely. You'll see in the Carers Reference Group update at the end of the report in Appendix B that that's one of the areas that Matt is working on actively and will be working on over the next 12 months to help increase the diversity of the Carers Reference Group moving forward. I think our latest estimates are around 25,000 carers in Aberdeen City, which is a big number. And whilst we've been able to increase the number of carers that have been identified and referred into support services, it's an area that we want to continue to work on. So absolutely, Matt will be focusing on that moving forward and increasing that diversity.
That's great, because we see and we see the benefits, we see the success of the individual groups and activities. So clearly there would be scope and opportunity to create something that will cater to the needs of minority ethnic groups and others, which will be hopefully funded and which will make a difference. So many thanks.
Hussein?
Thank you very much. Can I firstly associate myself with Martin's comments? There is a phenomenal amount of work that has gone into this, and that report makes for really interesting reading. So I put on record my thanks to yourself, Stuart, and also to the whole team that's worked on this. And nothing I say is intended to detract from that. Firstly, just a suggestion in the cover paper under the equality section, we quite rightly talk about ethnic minority groups and also the LGBTQ community. Could I also suggest worth adding the disabled community in there as well, because of the specific references to them in the action plan? And turning to the action plan, there's very specific mention of work with people with multiple disabilities, and quite rightly so, and likewise quite rightly for people with learning disabilities who are often face some of the most serious challenges in our community. I'm wondering if you could expand as to some of the work that's happening to support other disabled people, particularly those with, say, a sensory disability, who might also require an extended level of support if they're caring for someone.
Thanks, Hussein. And yes, we'll certainly get that added in future cover reports. Totally take that point on board. So yes, we've been doing a lot of work in relation to supporting disabled carers. One of the examples I would provide is probably the We2, the Ninjas project, which is supporting parent carers. To give an example, and I'm not the best voice for lived experience, absolutely, but I'll try my best to share it. We had a parent carer who was looking after her disabled son, and there was a conference taking place in a venue in Aberdeen, and she was sat outside in the car saying that I don't belong in venues like that at all. So the parent carers obviously came out, had a chat with her, etc. And gradually, through conversations, encouragement, sharing experiences, that parent carer actually went in to the venue, had lunch, networked, had a nice time. But also during that process, there was an awards presentation at the latter part of the day. So from going from sitting in the car feeling like they don't belong in a setting like that whilst looking after her disabled son, she actually went up, accepted the presentation on behalf of the group, and delivered quite a small speech, but gave a speech in terms of her thanks and the experiences that she had gone through. So there's examples there, Hussein, of how this work is leading to us helping to support more carers. I absolutely accept that we've got more work to do, but I'm hopeful that the report demonstrates that we've been able to make new ground in those areas, and we'll continue to do that over the years to come.
Okay, any more comments or questions? Not see any hands. Yeah, I mean, Stuart, those if we needed to be reminded about why this is important, those figures that you gave us at the start, I think probably underlie it and ram it home. So thanks for the report. I think it's really good. And yeah, as you say, there are. Yeah, I don't want this to sound critical because you've got a massive increase in the number of registered carers, but I guess there's an awful lot more out there who are not yet registered who we could do more for if we had the resources. Okay. Thanks for that. I'm just looking at the time. We've got the GP Vision item next. If we closed after 90 minutes, you'd have to be rattling through it at the rate of knots. And I'm quite keen that do you think we've got time in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes? Or, because we can break now, or I just wouldn't want not to do it justice.
Yeah, we can break now. That's fine. Yeah.
Can we agree the recommendations on the carers report, please? Thank you. Sorry. Right, I hope you didn't mind me taking an early break rather than a late break, but sometimes when we're in the council, several of us are shaking our hands at the Lord Provost saying it's nearly lunchtime. So I'd rather take an early break than a late one. So, right, the next item is 6.2, which is the GP Vision update. And is this Ali or Emma going to do this? Sorry. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Chapman. I am a Primary Care Development Manager within the City Health and Social Care Partnership, and I'm also the Programme Manager for the NHS Grampian General Practice Vision work. This report being presented to the IGB members today provides an update on the NHS Grampian GP Vision programme during the last 12 months. The programme will directly contribute to the strategic priorities set out in the Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership Strategic Plan, which aims to create capacity for general practice to help improve patient experience. The aim of the GP Vision is to create a sustainable general practice across Grampian, which enables people in their communities to stay well through the prevention and treatment of ill health by 2030. So within the report that's presented to you today, page 115 to 116 of the report outlines the programme management structure of the GP Vision programme, as well as the resource allocation and prioritised objectives for the delivery. There was no additional funding available to progress the objectives, therefore these are being delivered within existing resources, with priority being given to those objectives that were cross-cutting and would provide a strong basis for sustainability. The objectives that are being currently progressed are data, multidisciplinary team, models of contract, premises and digital. The programme board agreed that it was best use of resources to deliver 5 objectives initially well, rather than spend the limited resource across all 10 objectives. This remains a programme on the risk register, and consideration is to be taken that this still impacts on sustainability, and this will be seen in the medium term while there's no dedicated resource to move this programme forward. Page 116 to 124 outlines the progress of each of the objectives and any risks facing these objectives and anticipated progress for 25-26. Page 125 gives an overview of the planned stakeholder engagement, which will have a two-pronged approach. Firstly, there'll be a strategic communication campaign which will highlight the challenges faced by general practice to the general public, as well as necessary changes to general practice and how it now operates. Secondly, we'll be having a targeted communication with our GP practices to provide them with useful information to share with their own practices and their own patients using a Did You Know approach, which is built on best practice identified in Inverbervie Medical Practice. Page 125 and 126 of the report provides detail on the next steps for 25-26. This includes a refresh reprioritisation workshop, which will be held on the 5th of March with an extended programme board. This workshop will use learning from 2024-25, as well as current risks and opportunities and the available resources that we currently have to deliver the objectives, with the aim to look at what objectives would have the best chance of successful outcomes for sustainability of general practice. Considerations will also be given to the current strategic risks within the system and across all 3 IJBs to ensure that any prioritised objectives have the biggest impact on improving sustainability for general practice. Page 129 and 100 to 130 outline the risks in relation to the programme, which includes the non-delivery and how this would impact on sustainability, the challenges around delivering the programme within existing resources, and reputational risks around patient experience. Mitigations are in place for these risks, however, with increasing budget constraints, these risks remain in place and continue to be monitored. In summary, the GP Vision will continue into 25-26 with a potential refresh of priorities in March. The programme will continue to be delivered within existing resources with the HSCP teams, and there will be a future update in the IJB in spring 2026. Thank you for taking the time today to consider the report. I'm happy to take any questions, and we have Emma and Fraser both sit on the board, and Carol Buchanan, who's on the online link, would be able to help with any questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Very useful report and a good summary. Thank you for that. I think that this one's, really, really important. Everything is really important, but we've traditionally had sustainability of general practice as fairly high on the risk register, so it's one that is always front of mind for me. So anyone got any questions? I've got Hussein and then Martin.
Thank you very much, John, and please bear with me because there are a number of very nuanced questions, and I appreciate if some of this may need to be followed up offline. Firstly, thank you for the report. It's really comprehensive, and I think this is a really exciting time for general care, and really look forward to seeing how this develops over the coming years. And can I also put on record my thanks to all of our primary care colleagues and your team for the work that you're doing in this area. If I can turn mainly to section 4.8, which is around the data work stream. 4.8.1, could you perhaps just clarify what data sets you're primarily looking to collect, please?
I can come in a bit on there for you. So data sets in primary care is a complex issue. At the moment, what we're looking at in terms of data, there's a cross between the PSIP review and data sets. So what we're looking at are all the services that have been implemented by PSIP and how successful they are in terms of, are there any opportunities for improvement, for change, or to increase sustainability? Are there any opportunities for taking on board population opinion? So the data sets are services, what actual services we are providing, the amount of people that are attending services within the hubs, for example, rather than providing services from a practice. Data sets are also around population opinion, so going out and seeking opinion of our population in terms of, and our communities, do you access this service? Did you prefer it when it's in practice? And also the opinions of staff that deliver these services. So when we're looking at a service change through data sets, we're taking the view of everyone that's impacted by it, rather than just a driven sort of access, for example. What's your access data per practice? It's complex in GP world in terms of we don't have something called QoF, which I don't know if anyone knows about. So QoF is a quality assurance framework that was in England and Scotland, and it was a way that the government used to say you meet QoF guidelines and you therefore get payments, enhanced contracts. So simplicity, it's like points make prizes. Scotland made a decision a long time ago to stop QoF. So we still have it in England, but we don't have it in Scotland anymore. So we are working continuously with our Scottish Government colleagues in terms of how can we then have influence on our practices for them to be able to give us data from their information that's all coded in the same way. If there's no regulatory body that dictates that no longer happens in Scotland. So we have to have excellent relationships with our practices to ask for that data. And of course, each practice is an independent contractor, so they often do things in a different way. So we do get these sets of data, but of course, as you can tell, it takes a lot longer than it would have in our traditional settings when we had QoF on board. As a summary of data.
Thank you. That's really helpful. You can tell where my interest lies here. And, yeah, that'll be interesting work with the practices, obviously appreciating also the workload on them as well for every additional ask that we have on them. Just under 484, again, just a clarification, really interesting to see the demand survey data collection. I'm assuming that will also include, although albeit it's easier to collect this, any demand data through, for example, eConsult or other channels?
So I'll just come in. We've got some demand data fresh in, actually, because we have a meeting with Scottish Government tomorrow. So interestingly, one of my colleagues over there from the primary care team sent out a Mentimeter, and we got results today around demand data. So actually, there are lots of issues, and practices are saying that it's the ability to book ahead. That's the main problem. And then an 8 o'clock scramble full appointments. And then thirdly, continuity of care. So access, so the three key themes that are coming through in terms of demand data that practices would like support with. And actually, we have within our PSIP review, with our data, with our contracts as well, well able to look at those 3 key themes that are coming through and how we can support practices with those key main issues moving forward via vision. And that's part of the refresher workshop as well that we've got in March, that will take on board all this data and actually how do we reprioritize the resources that we have to work with those demand areas.
Thanks very much. And if there's anything that you're able to share just internally on how that progresses, it'd be really interesting, because that's more a personal interest than anything else. Turning on to where are we going with this? Yeah, so I absolutely agree with some of what you're saying. We see that coming through on the LMC updates as well. If I can just briefly turn it slightly off topic, but related to this, around medication prescribing, which is a key challenge for us. And I'm aware of some of the work that was done throughout 2024 around the public messaging, and that goes hand in hand with the communication strategy that's in here as well. I'm just wondering anecdotally if you have heard anything in terms of a response to that and any change that has driven.
So anecdotally, in terms of the prescription scripts, put my teeth back in, prescription switches, because that was also what came out of that. So practices were supporting in terms of encouraging patients to go from one prescription to another prescription that was cheaper in origin. And practices have been supporting us with that. To date, we haven't had any complaints that are saying that that's had a significant impact. Patients seem to be happy and understand that. The impact that we have is actually how do we free up GP practices to be able to do this work for us whilst meeting the current demand.
Thanks very much. That's all from me for now. But once again, just thank you for the work that you're doing, and very much look forward to seeing how this develops.
Thanks. I got Martin on the list next.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the risk analysis. There's mention there of the high risk of non-engagement by the workforce, and I'm wondering if that has any connection with reluctance, perhaps, to engage with the digital interface. Rightly, the digital plan is becoming more and more prominent. It's more important, and I'm just wondering if there is that shared understanding of our responsibility and our commitment to the digital use in primary care and in research and so forth. I'm aware that the university has various projects on fracture analysis, which is an AI project. There's the Safe Haven for Image Data, another health project. I mean, there's a lot going on to promote use of digital for diagnosis and also for prevention and so forth. So I'm not sure if that bigger picture needs to be conveyed in some way so that we get an appreciation of how much we will become more reliant and rightly so on new processes. I'm just wondering if that's an issue, if that's part of the risk.
So there's good question, but there's different lines towards this. So when you talk about AI, digital supporting within diagnostics, that's supporting a clinician to be able to diagnose, and that's a different AI technology, which yes, our clinicians are on board with. We have our digital leads that are around this work, and then you have digital solutions that support with access, and it's very different depending on your practice population. So like eConsult you mentioned earlier, and it's depending on your practice population, depends on whether the practice will take up on that or not. Each practice has its own bespoke community. So for example, one of our practices has a high frailty, sort of like 65% of their population is frailty. Therefore, digital solutions to support access with this particular practice are not as well received and aren't as good for that population. However, we have other practices that have a high percentage of students, and therefore the digital solutions in terms of accessing an e-consult are used more freely in those practices. So it's not about digital, it's about understanding your community and then how you layer on a digital solution. And you have to know your communities to be able to do that properly to support them. So yes is my answer. We do, but in some areas you'll find that you really don't. But that's for a bespoke reason to meet that population need, because the practice identifies that the input doesn't get the output with that community.
Yeah, thanks for that. That makes absolute sense. I mean, I'm just conscious that the new technology is going to become more and more prominent. It's going to guide and determine practice in all of these different ways in different areas. And I think that very often when something new comes forward, when there's new systems and so forth, there can be that reluctance. We can need some encouragement to appreciate that this is the way forward, and the opportunities for diversifying the technology is infinite. So we'll find ways of making it meet professional needs in different ways. But it's just that there's that sense that it's coming, and it doesn't always have a good reputation, and you worry about that. That's all.
Interesting, Richie.
Yeah, thanks, John. And again, thanks for the paper. All the work streams are incredibly important, and there'll be interconnections between them all as well. Clearly, as you're going to have this morning. And my question, I guess, partly been answered already, but maybe just to extend it a wee bit. I was interested in the patient experience bit, and also around about the data and the demand around the ATM scramble, I think you called it, or the ATM scramble, and the booking ahead. So while I get largely ad hoc kind of feedback, is that once people get a service from the GP, it's generally pretty good, but it's getting that first bit right or better that says the kind of chatter that comes back kind of consistently. And also, I guess, in terms of the system, we want to have a system that's flexible and agile and respects the autonomy of some of the practices, but equally there's a kind of consistency or standardisation around some of the services and access to them. So I guess my question therefore is, in whether it's a digital part solution here again, is to what extent do you see this work possibly beginning to influence that kind of the scramble in the morning or the booking ahead? Is the expectation that this work might start to get into some of that, and ultimately whose decision is that then in terms of what system that a GP practice might deploy in terms of that booking system, for example? Just again to help understand what I don't want to set expectations unreasonably, but just understand how this work might influence the output or outcome from some of that. Thanks.
It's quite a few questions to unpack there. Remind me of them as we go along. So in terms of how much influence do we have over practices in terms of what systems they use? They're independent businesses. So the influence we have is inviting them to vision work, seeking their opinion, and then using the opportunities that we currently have, like developer obligations, like grants, to be able to support and fund them if they want to use a digital solution or change a system, if we can. So there's so the demand really is dictated by the practice and the practice population. We don't have the opportunity to dictate how a practice does that. In terms of an equitable service, though, because you're right, in some areas it might look like, well, that's not equitable. How come they get this opportunity and I don't in this area? What we're trying to do to readdress that is we're arranging a Grampian-wide primary care board. What the vision work has highlighted is we have City, Shire and Murray that work fantastically, but I wouldn't say we always work fantastically and collaboratively across each other. So what we're doing to counteract that, because that's reliant on personalities and who's in post, and it shouldn't be like that. So what we're doing to counteract that is we're creating a Grampian-wide primary care board under the guise of our chief officers to ensure that that strategic vision across Grampian is in place that will increase that equitable access of services, because you'll have that collaborative across iVision rather than you can get a bit focused when you are working in siloed of area. Does that answer all your questions?
Thank you. Jennifer, next on the list.
Thank you. I have a question about stakeholder engagement, page 125. And it mentions a couple of communication campaigns or strategies. Is there a time frame associated with that work at all?
At the moment, no, we don't have a specific time frame for that particular work. And it's one of the things I think both Em and I have discussed this for the refresh workshop. Potentially this is an opportunity to have communications as a work stream on its own, because that's maybe something that was a bit of a miss last year. And when we did kind of prioritise the objectives, it really probably is something that would be a standalone piece of work. So it's just kind of been people around the programme board like putting their hands up to kind of participate in those groups rather than actual dedicated resources for that particular piece of work. So I'm kind of hoping at that workshop we'll be able to progress that going into this next year.
Yeah, so just to come in on that, communication, it's not one of the 5 priorities currently, hence refresher workshop as well, in terms of, I mean, it is a theme across all the priorities. I'm not saying it's not, but what we're seeing is actually we really need to get out and talk to our communities more. There has so much changed in our general medical services, and not just our general medical services, dental, pharmacotherapy, Optom, all of our services. A lot has changed since COVID, and I don't think we've been prioritising enough getting out into our communities and telling them how that's changed. So therefore, accepting change is difficult. So you can put barriers in the way for the water to flow, but unless the person understands the barrier, they won't swim around it, they'll swim against it. So it's a key priority in our refresher workshops.
Okay, any more comments, questions? Nope, not seeing any hands. I had one actually on, I can find it. Yeah, it's the high risk thing on page 131 on engagement with the workforce. The question is, what can the 3 boards, because we do talk to each other quite a lot, what can the 3 boards do to help with that, if anything?
To help with engagement.
Yeah.
Engagement with our practices. What can the 3 boards?
The answer may be nothing. So.
No, I'm just thinking on my feet. What can the 3 boards do to support us? Ali?
I don't know, perhaps through the kind of cluster meetings that are within each of the 3 health and social care partnerships. That could be a really good forum to kind of try and get our way across the whole of the area. I think there definitely has been some kind of anecdotal evidence that some practices are feeling that they've not really heard what's going on within the GP vision. We do a newsletter after each of the programme boards, which is sent directly to each of the GP practices. But I think there probably is a bit of, I think it came from Aberdeenshire specifically, that there's maybe not very visible what we're working on so far. And I think because it is quite kind of strategic and kind of long term, I think there was a bit of excitement after the workshops 2 years ago, and there's maybe feeling there's a bit of a flat feeling after that within some of the GP practices. So I don't know, maybe using the clusters or I don't know.
I guess as well, board members, in your day-to-day activities when you are meeting GPs in your communities and other clinicians that work within primary care, it's about encouraging them to be part of the vision work. It's about encouraging them to be part of the GP sub, to attend LMC so their voices are heard. I quite frequently hear disgruntled conversations and why can't this change, and I say, well, that's a different opinion to what's being represented at some of your boards. So I try and encourage them to be members of those boards. So I would ask you actually to encourage them also to be members of their boards so their voices are heard.
Thanks for that. No, I think that was all I had, apart from the to observe that in the light of Hussein's question about AI earlier on, there seemed to be quite a lot of mentions of it in the paper. So having a seminar on that might be quite helpful. So are we happy to agree the recommendations, just to note the content of the report? Thank you very much, and thanks. I'm glad we did break early there on that one, because it was nearly half an hour, so we would have been going over our 90 minutes if we'd not broken early. Okay, that then brings us on to 6.3, which is the Marywell practice options appraisal. And Teresa, Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Teresa Waugh. I'm one of the Primary Care Development Managers for the Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. I'm joined this morning by Simon Rayner, Strategic Lead for the Aberdeen City Alcohol and Drugs Partnership, and Emma King, our Primary Care Lead. So this report and its recommendations align to the following strategic aims of the Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership, as outlined in the Strategic Plan 22-2025, of preventing ill health, caring together, keeping the population safe at home, and to achieve healthy, fulfilling lives, with a particular focus on preventing ill health to meet the complex needs of those at risk of drug-related harm. Aberdeen, like many areas in Scotland, continues to see high levels of drug-related mortality, and this work will support the Scottish Government's national mission to reduce drug deaths and the Alcohol and Drug Partnership strategic priorities and the recently approved market position statement. In addition, this report and recommendations also align with the work of Community Planning Aberdeen Local Outcome Improvement Plan and the Homewards Programme, Stretch Outcome 12, to reduce homelessness by 10% and youth homelessness by 6%, ensuring that it is rare, brief and non-recurring, with a longer-term ambition to end homelessness in Aberdeen City, as well as Stretch Outcome 11 to reduce substance use deaths. The report being presented to IJB members today provides an update on the Marywell practice redesign, its consideration of options and recommendations on the service's future direction. Following completion of the options appraisal that members can find within Appendix A, it has been recommended that members agree to implement Option 2 for the Marywell practice to continue to operate as a 2C general medical specialist service with the support of recurring ring-fenced ADP funding. This option enables the practice to continue the successful collaboration and joint working with the Integrated Drug Service, the Timmer Market and Community Nursing Outreach Team, which has progressed during the last 3 years. Services would continue with the opportunity to enhance these further with improved access and expansion of outreach areas across the city. Teams will further develop and embed the successful health screening initiative and continue to support the implementation of medication-assisted treatment standards as a direct response to drug-related deaths in the city. This option also maximises the opportunity to continue working with Community Planning Aberdeen and the Homewards Programme and Aberdeen Coalition. The recurring ADP funding would also provide an opportunity to make permanent arrangements for clinical GP staff and create a sustainable model and staffing structure to meet the needs of this vulnerable patient group. Members have comprehensive details of the work completed within the appendices of the report, and you can find that from page 153 onwards. I would like to note my thanks to Health Improvement Scotland for their help and support to progress the Planning with People guidance, and to all of the staff, patients, service users and professionals, including independent and third sector groups, for their valuable and ongoing consultation, engagement and lived experience contributions. To conclude, this work represents the opportunity to provide truly integrated services for the most vulnerable in an efficient and multidisciplinary way. Thank you, members, for taking the time to consider the report, information and recommendations. Myself, Simon and Emma will be happy to take any questions or queries.
questions. Martin.
Thank you. Excellent report. Really important. Welcome activities going on there. There's mention there that the fund, the £100,000 recurring funding is very welcome, essential. I was trying to find out how long the funding will be in place for. Recurring wasn't really precise, and I was trying to find that. I think that would be useful to know. Thank you.
Okay, so it's on an ongoing recurring basis, so it's on a permanent basis until such time we may choose to finish or redesign or do something different. But we will have a service level agreement in place just to make sure we're monitoring what we do and yeah. Okay.
Any more questions or comments? Richie?
Just a comment, really. The Oxford appraisal was really comprehensive, and there's a very clear conclusion seen what came out of it. So we're not, personally, not going to rerun that process here. So just endorsing the work and the findings. Thanks.
Thanks. Any more? Anyone else want to come in? Not seeing any hands. In which case, are we happy to agree the recommendations and to go with option 2? Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 7.2, which is the Grampian Vaccination and Immunisation Programme and the annual report. And I think it's Claire Louise going to... Oh, she's online, right.
That's correct, Chair. Thank you very much. My name is Claire Louise Walker. I'm a consultant in public health for NHS Grampian, and I'm also the immunisations coordinator for NHS Grampian. And online with me today, I have Joe Hall, who's our programme manager, and Stephen Main and Caroline from the HSCP, who are part of the delivery team. So, as you will see, this is our second annual report. It's still fairly weighty document, running to 50-odd pages. And the idea is that it's to give assurance about the breadth of vaccination activity carried out in NHS Grampian, and also to put things like the data into context so that readers have information about the vaccination services. So vaccination, obviously, it's a key part of the prevention agenda. We have had lots of change in programmes over the last year. We've had new programmes, we've had changes to existing programmes, and all the while there's an eye on transitioning from a mass vaccination hub model to something perhaps more business as usual that's a bit more flexible. The thing to note really from the report is that Europe, the 4 nations, Scotland, we've all seen a decline in vaccination uptake pretty much across the board. Grampian generally performs well, so it performs above the Scottish average for practically all cohorts in all programmes. What I would like to draw attention to is the fantastic work that's been done by the delivery teams in Aberdeen City, particularly around childhood vaccinations. When you look at the figures for 12 months, 24 months, practically everywhere the rates are falling, not by much, only by a few percentage points. But the figures for City are actually bucking the trend, and they are rising slightly. So in a situation where everything is going down, they've managed to turn it and make those rates go up. And if you want to see how they did it, if you actually turn to section 9 of the report, you'll see a spotlight on some of the outreach activities and some of the ways that they employ the vaccination and wellbeing hub to get people in who perhaps normally wouldn't think about vaccination, but they come in perhaps for something else. And while they're there, because of the brilliant work that's done around making every opportunity count, that actually gives an opportunity to talk about vaccination and to give vaccinations where appropriate. So I do want to say that like I say, in this landscape of falling rates, even to have the modest increases that they've done is a really good thing. So the other things just to flag for you on the horizon are we've got more change coming in the next year or so. So we have a new strategic framework which has been developed by the Scottish Vaccination and Immunisation Programme, which is an arm of Public Health Scotland. And there's a focus on equity coming into that. So we're looking at improving and reducing health inequality. Now, having said that we do a very good programme, which we do, the one area that we're not as good as other areas is our groups, such as those who are suffering socioeconomic deprivation and those who are from particular ethnic minorities. And that's going to be a particular focus in our quality improvement work going forward. The other thing just to flag that is that national standards are also coming in this year, which are going to be linked to the board's ADP. I will say that although there's probably quite a lot of activity going to be done around these, they're going to be absorbed into existing resources. So when you see a note in the report about that, it's just plain common sense. We can get more people through a vaccination hub in the same time that we can do a much smaller group of we can see and look after a much smaller group of people if we're actually having to go out and find them. And there may come a point where there's a push between what we can afford to do to keep up our main rates, but at the same time still reach out to those important groups so that we can make sure they get the vaccination offer in a way that they're able to take up. Just another couple of highlights. There's been talk about doing things together rather than separately. So we have had a couple of things happening this year that we're doing once across Grampian. So one is the amalgamation of the existing call centres into one call centre, which is dealing now with enquiries for the whole of Grampian. And secondly, the development of the new travel health service, which actually goes live this week, which is a once for Grampian approach to travel health, and is being run out of the is being hosted by Aberdeen City, for which we're very thankful. That's all I have to say really for general remarks about the paper, and would like to open if anybody has any questions for us. Thank you.
Thanks for that, and encouraging that we're seeing an uptick in the uptake, going against the sort of global and European trend. Any questions, comments? Martin.
Yeah, thanks. I think the paper speaks for itself. It's very positive, really welcome to see improvements in particular. It's really excellent to see the impacts that the vaccination programme is having. And we're due to get another report back, I think, in a year. So just mention of variations in trends, starts to get you slightly worried. So I think it'll be very useful for us to come back and see if there are any ongoing trends and tendencies, because we want to keep the number of cases as low as possible. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the impact of the programme with very small, manageable numbers or rates and cases. So yeah, it's just a very positive report, and we want to remain positive about this work. But yeah, there are those concerns, niggles about the risks of increases, which I think we would want to know about and find ways of addressing. Thanks.
Okay, I got a hand from Phil Mackey.
Thanks very much, Chair. Perhaps I'm only going to echo Martin's comments here, Claire, Joe and others. Thank you for an excellent report. I think it does display such a high degree of commitment and high quality work on the immunisation programme. Especially, we shouldn't forget over a period of time where there has been changes in programmes, all of which have to be accommodated, all of which happen at short notice and all of which end up being directed by a government in a way that has very high levels of expectation on us. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the working environment in which you're operating. I think the point made about ensuring we understand ongoing risk and don't become overly reassured that things are going well is something that we do need to think about carefully. And I wonder, given immunisation is an area for an IJB insight discussion later on in the spring, some of those potential areas of risk might be a suitable focus for us to reflect on as an IJB to continue in picking that up. And I think finally, the only other point I'd want to make is, given we are now a city that has one of the three marmot places in Scotland supports coming in, whether or not there's some learning there that we might wish to explore with the team that are coming in jointly from UCL and Public Health Scotland to look at ways of trying to target genuine universal proportional responding here. I think we do need to make sure that we don't become over focused on targeting to the exclusion of maintaining high levels of uptake across the rest of the population. So I'll pause there and well, I'll just shut up. It's easier.
Anyone want to comment on that, or have we got any more comments, questions? As ever, Phil makes helpful suggestions. Right. Oh, and got a hand from David Blackburn. David.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Martin and Phil. I might be reiterating some of their messages, but thanks to Claire Louise for the report. I wanted to discuss influenza vaccination specifically. We know that uptake has been lower this season across the region, and that has massive ramifications for healthcare in the region likewise. It means we can't be complacent in our messaging, and I wonder if we have been, and I wondered if you could comment, Claire Louise, on that idea and how we might reach the population more effectively ahead of next winter, dare I say. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. So as I'm sure you're aware, influenza vaccination is a programmed activity that takes place between October through to March. Along with that, we have this year we've had COVID vaccination as well, and the idea is to maximise the vaccination opportunities by offering both together. This has its benefits and it also has its risks, because the COVID vaccination has perhaps more questions, more concerns about it in the public, and we know from the uptake figures is generally less popular. People are less likely to take that where they're able to take the influenza, where they're willing to take the influenza vaccines up. You're right, there has been a decline this year, and again, it's not just a city decline, it's not just a Grampian decline, it's not just a Scotland decline. So there are a lot of external factors that we're battling here, and despite the fact that for all the age and all the at-risk cohorts we are outperforming Scotland, that's good. But then on the other hand, we've still got that decrease in uptake. Several things came together this year. One is that normally there's a big national flu campaign. That didn't happen this year. It was decided that wasn't going to happen. And there is some evaluation going on nationally to see what the effect of that was. Obviously, we do all the things we would normally do in the way of inviting people for vaccination and in the way that we communicate with the public. We have we have appointments in the centres. We have once we get towards the end of the season, we have drop-ins. Once we get we have pop-ups where we see that the places where the uptake isn't so good. So we do all those kind of things to try and improve uptake. There's always more that can be done, and perhaps this is coming into some of the quality improvement work we're looking at taking forward, which is how we can work with communities about getting the vaccination message out there, perhaps making it less scary, getting more facts out there for those people who are perhaps a bit hesitant about vaccines in general, particularly after COVID has come forward. One of the things that we're looking at is there are existing community networks and community champions in communities, and we're looking at how we can work together really to get more supportive messages out there, particularly around influenza and to some extent COVID. The other thing that makes it slightly more complicated with the COVID being co-administered is that, as you will have seen as the years have gone by, the groups who are getting the COVID vaccination are shrinking. So we go out with a very strong message, a few years ago saying everybody must be vaccinated, and now we're saying actually you don't need to be vaccinated, you don't need to be vaccinated, you don't need to be vaccinated, and obviously that is going to cause questions in the mind of the public who perhaps want more information, or perhaps because of the COVID vaccination and feelings towards that, tarval vaccines with the same version perhaps decide they're going to opt out altogether, because even even things that we've traditionally had good uptake with, so for example shingles and the pneumococcal vaccines, which we switched to from January this year, we're already starting to see that our uptake isn't quite as good as it has been in recent years. So I think that we need to be in communities. I think we need to call on the support actually of members around the table, both as elected members, but also as leaders in particular parts of the partnership, to help us get those messages out that yes, it is worth being vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. Amplifying the messages we put out about where vaccines can be. Where you can go to get your vaccines, all those things are important, but I would be lying to you if I said it isn't a difficult working environment at the moment, because there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy out there. Sorry, I've gone on a bit, thank you.
No, it was useful.
Can I reply to?
Yes, do come back in.
There is, I hear what you're saying, Claire Louise, and about vaccine hesitancy, and I fear the situation in the US doesn't help. I wondered if you had any thoughts on that, in the fact that Robert Kennedy had declared anti-vax likely health minister in the US, health secretary in the US is going to be appointed. As far as I know, it hasn't been formalised as yet. We will have to work harder in this country to promote the idea of vaccination being perhaps the most efficient tool we have in our toolbox to combat hospital overload.
Yes, I don't want to say too much about the US. I will say that we do know that Mr. Kennedy has had influence in other countries which have negatively affected their vaccination rates. I'll be honest, I don't know how much difference his interventions will make above the general kind of noise that's already there. And I think the same kind of tools about combating misinformation and around vaccines. Probably it's the same kind of interventions we're talking about. But yes, it certainly doesn't help. It doesn't make it any easier for us. Thank you.
I saw a hand from Amanda Foster, but I didn't know whether Phil Macking wants just to.
Can I just come in on that particular point that David raised?
Is that okay, Amanda, if Phil just comes in? Go on, Phil.
Thanks very much. I think we just have to recognise that popularist politicians speak on what they perceive to be underlying views from their electorate. And I think if we are to be serious about challenging the type of false information that speaks to that type of group, that will reduce the potential for that type of reassurance, if you like, to individuals being influential. I think it doesn't change what we have to do. What it does is put an added urgency to recognizing that this is an essential component in our overall approach to prevention. We could say exactly the same about a range of other circumstances where people's sense of we don't need to worry about this, do we, is actually fed into a misinformation type of system. And I think we really need to address the misinformation, and that will mean we can address this from whatever source. But we shouldn't underestimate that is a requirement on us. It's not something that's going to happen from elsewhere. We have to be consistent and coherent in supporting accurate information, which helps and supports people's preventative journeys.
Thanks, Phil. Amanda, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I did. As I say, well, thanks very much for the report. It was very comprehensive, I thought. But I think one of the things that I found really interesting, and it would be a good idea to sort of, promote, is that the vaccinations help sort of reduce disability. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think that maybe it might be a good idea to sort of promote that. But I thought it was a really very well written report, and thanks very much for it.
Thanks for that, Amanda. I've got Jane Russell online.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to add in just to the comments made already. I totally agree with Phil in terms of it's so difficult, isn't it, in terms of where we focus. But I think in Aberdeen City, we do have a fantastic partnership relationship with many of our providers. And I'm wondering whether we could just follow almost the Scottish Government's trajectory of providers as partners within health and social care, but also patients as partners. And if we see everyone as partners, then surely that will be easier to get messages out and really encompass and harness the energy and the contacts within the wider social health and social care landscape. And maybe I just feel that given the information that Claire Louise has given us and, the concerns from David, that I think we do need to work on this really. It's such a key issue, isn't it? And I'm just wondering, I think we do benefit in the city from having the strength of partnership working across the board. And I'm just wondering whether we can just focus on that a little bit more. I mean, we can see it happening, certainly in the report that Stuart gave us before on the unpaid carers efforts. And that's bringing everyone in to try and identify and help people to see themselves as an unpaid carer and how that has worked. So I think we've got some really good models in the city, and certainly on behalf of the third sector, we have 1/5 of the population within Aberdeen that are volunteering. So I think there are opportunities there that we can grab hold of this. And as people say, there is misinformation. We're seeing it across the board in domestic abuse and on social media with our young people. And I think we do need to make a stand to see and identify misinformation where it's happening and act on it. So I just wanted to add those thoughts to the conversation, but to thank the speakers so far, because I think what you're saying is really key to the health of ourselves in Aberdeen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. And I've got a hand from Claire Louise online.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back in to respond to Jane, because thank you. It's really positive comments. I know that our local team, and I know Stephen's just popped up, so I don't know if he wants to come in as well. But I know they're very active in local partnership working. I'd also like to say, you know, if anybody does have any concerns or any questions, you know, please do come and talk to me. Or if you've got an idea for quality improvement and you're not quite sure how it will work, you know, please come and talk to me, because I'm very happy to be having those conversations both at a strategic level and with Stephen and colleagues on a more local level as well. So, but thank you.
Thank you for that. I think Fiona wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just thought before you come to your recommendations, John, I thought it was key. I'm thinking about the winter planning that Richie asked us about way earlier on in this meeting, and some of the winter planning. So we know in December we saw a significant spike in flu that we hadn't seen, and we knew the vaccination uptake hadn't been as good as it was across staff as well as in the local population. And certainly some of the conversations we were having with the CABSEC was absolutely about that hesitancy and the concerns around about that. But I guess one of the things that made me very proud to be part of Aberdeen City was the response from our providers. So in between Christmas and New Year, we went out to them and said, we need to get more staff vaccinated. We're seeing an increase in staff absence, and obviously we've got lots of services to continue to deliver. And within the space of a day, they had 5 venues across our providers that were offering staff. Didn't matter what staff you were, but to go to. So I think that's something positive to end on, that it was a really difficult time for us. And that winter planning, we saw that spike at least a month earlier than we would normally. But the providers absolutely stepped up when we went out with that ask, and that volunteers and that good relationships that Jane was referring to just made me very proud to be Aberdeen City and give that opportunity to staff to make it available to them. Thanks.
Thanks. I've got a hand from Stephen Main and then Hussein.
Thanks very much, and yeah, thank you, Claire and everyone for the report, pulling everything together. And my thanks as always to the team that have delivered the kind of winter programme, albeit in those kind of challenging circumstances that we were kind of faced with the spike in cases. And obviously it goes down to Caroline and everyone from the organisational side, and already planning the delivery of the programme for next year begins now. You know, we're a bit like Santa, everything's preparing for that big date towards the winter. But yeah, I think the points I want to raise is we want to kind of continue to increase those numbers. It's not something we want to sit in our hands and, you know, just say that, yes, there has been some small increases. We want to see that continue. And we're obviously looking at other ways that we can do it. And, you know, looking at other kind of providers that we can work alongside that's already happening, particularly within the vaccination and wellbeing hub, using things like, you know, appointment days and various other things, which brings that kind of normality into the vaccination hub itself. So yeah, I think that the only challenge, I suppose, is that year on year, yes, the cohorts may be changing slightly. We're getting new programs added, and that will kind of continue on. But the funding is kind of coming with that same bit as well. So it's trying to think of innovative ways that we're delivering the same level, if not more, but with slightly less staff. And I think that's been the challenge this year when we were trying to go out to some of the places earlier. We've got such cohorts and groups coming in, those with underlying health conditions, those within the age cohorts that we're initially targeting, which previously we've maybe had that extra capacity to go and do pop-ups prior to it, but now we are kind of playing catch up with ourselves just with the challenges that we've got financially. So I just wanted to kind of raise that as we're still working at it. There's still plenty more to do, but yeah, I appreciate all the work that everyone's working together with.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Any more hands? Oh, sorry, Hussein.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the paper and the discussion. I think that's been really interesting. I had a curiosity that I you know, touches upon some of the vaccine hesitancy, but also touches upon some of what Stephen just said. And obviously, going back to, this is mainly around seasonal vaccines, but if we look at the COVID vaccine, for example, there were very strict criteria that were put in place by the JCVI, you know, for good reason. And quite often with seasonal vaccines, you will see criteria that say that those with specific, you know, chronic conditions also become eligible for vaccines, you know, whether it's COVID or influenza or whatever it may be. Sometimes you might have individuals that have underlying conditions that are not referenced in the criteria, for whom, any other bug or flu or cold or whatever it may be, possibly leads to that condition being exacerbated, and obviously the knock-on impact that has on both prescribing and on the health service generally. So I'm just wondering if we can have some comment on where does the decision lie for these cases which are maybe not captured in standard guidelines, whether it's local guidelines or JCVI?
Chair, is it okay if I come back in?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. For the flu programme, there is some flexibility. So if a flu vaccine is a medication like any other medication. So if, for example, the person's usual doctor, whether that be their GP or whether it be their consultant, thought that somebody fell without the guide, fell without the cohorts, which, as you say, are quite strict, but would benefit from it, then there's a couple of things that could happen. The one that's most straightforward is they can refer into us, and we can kind of look at it regarding what we've done before, what other places are doing, what other boards are doing, those kind of things, and see if we can offer a vaccine. The other thing is that any registered medical practitioner who's a prescriber can actually prescribe a vaccine for their patient and administer it if that's what they wish to do. So there's a couple of different routes. The reason why I'm sounding slightly hesitant is because we had a new programme this year, the RSV programme, which was for older people, but also for to protect infants too. And because it was a new programme, a brand new programme, and JCVI had only just looked at who should and who shouldn't be included on it, we really, when I say we, I mean, the constituent members of the Scottish vaccination programme, with the help of PHS and the Scottish Government, decided that we felt we couldn't actually accept any referrals for people who didn't fall within those strict criteria groups, because they'd only just been set, whereas there's perhaps a little bit more flexibility for older vaccines where we haven't quite got that same newness perhaps of and strictness. But as I said, there is always the option that if a prescriber wishes somebody to have it, in the same way if they wish somebody to have a another treatment, they would be able to prescribe it for their patient.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I mean, the reason for my question is really twofold. There is anecdotal word in the community about people who, felt there was a very strong case to be made, as you've just iterated there, to receive a vaccine. There were also cases within the community for those who wanted to protect others, such as, for example, those who were maybe being cared for by, support coming in, or carers or friends who were providing them with support, who didn't want to, put others at risk, and therefore who felt that there was a case to be made. And I'm wondering perhaps if it's something we can maybe look at in the communication, appreciating it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Trying to manage staff capacity and resources with projected demand. If there's a way of maybe looking at that to say that, there are situations, as opposed to maybe those individuals saying, well, I just don't qualify, I won't make any inquiries, or I won't do anything about this. And as I say, depending on who that individual is, and those that may be affected as a consequence of their decision, the knock-on impact on the health system, maybe that's something that you could look at in terms of, future policy or communications around future campaigns. But thank you for that.
Do you want to come back on that, Claire Louise?
I just wanted to come back briefly about carers, because often when we're talking about protecting other people, we're talking about carers in the household. And JCVI this year decided, particularly about COVID vaccination, that this wasn't going to be available to carers. They also recommended that there wasn't a mass vaccination reason to give health and social care staff COVID vaccination either.